The attack came without warning. The colonial fleet, stretched thin across 17 star systems, did not see the enemy ships until they were already burning. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Collective's pride, as alarms screamed through every corridor. His 3 arms moved quickly across the control panels, but it was too late. The ships kept coming. "How many?" he asked his weapons officer, a named who had served for 30 years without losing a single engagement. 200 hostile vessels, said his voice empty of hope. They are not slowing. His large blue eyes fixed on the tactical display. They had always believed their advanced technology made them safe. They had explored the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had built cities on dead planets and brought life to barren worlds. They had created weapons that could level mountains, but none of that mattered now. The first destroyer erupted in white fire, then another and another. "Raise shields on all remaining vessels," commanded. "Move the civilian transports to the outer rim, get the children away from here." The enemy ships were unlike anything in the archives. Their hulls were dark gray, covered in spikes and ugly protrusions. They fired weapons that cut through defenses like water through sand. Within the first hour, lost 40 ships. Within 3 hours, he had lost 90. Watched his people die on the screens. He watched entire families vanish into explosions. He watched the colony on 7 send final messages before their defensive stations went dark. The women and children down there, the scientists, the artists, all gone. "Sir," said quietly, "we cannot win this battle." Knew his weapons officer was right. He had been in command long enough to know the difference between a difficult fight and a lost one. This was lost. The only question now was whether anything could be saved. "Send a distress call," he said. "Full spectrum, every frequency, every channel." "Who would answer us, sir?" asked. "The Alliance is too far. The fleet has their own problems, the humans." Did not let him finish. Send the call. 3 days of space travel away, aboard the human warship USS Defiant, Captain Harrison was reviewing weapons maintenance reports when the signal came through. The communications officer, a young man named from New America, straightened in his seat. "Captain, we are receiving a distress signal. It is in the frequency band." Looked up from his tablet. The USS Defiant was a proud ship, built with human ingenuity and steel, but it was also one of the smallest warships in space. Earth Command had sent it to the outer rim specifically because it was expendable. They wanted human eyes and ears on distant colonies, but they did not want to waste resources that mattered. "Where?" asked. "Territories, about 3 days' travel from our current position." Stood up and walked to the main. Space stretched before him, empty and black. He had captained the USS Defiant for 4 years. He had patrolled the outer rim, met alien species, and dealt with pirates and raiders. He had never received a distress call before. They were old and wise and strong. They did not need help from humans. "Play the message," he said. The signal came through, translated by the ship systems. Commander's voice was clear and steady, even as the background noise of battle roared behind him. "This is Commander of the Collective. Our worlds are under attack. An unknown enemy has invaded our space. We have lost contact with 15 colony worlds. 17 warships have been destroyed. We request immediate aid from any species that can respond. This is a call to all who value peace and order in the galaxy. We do not have much time." Then silence. Turned to look at his crew. They were watching him, waiting for his orders. "How long until we reach them?" he asked. 3 days at maximum speed," replied. "But Captain, Earth Command has not authorized any response. This region is outside our jurisdiction." Nodded. He knew that. He also knew what Earth Command would say if he asked permission. They would tell him they were not humanity's responsibility. They would tell him that sending a single warship to help would be a waste of resources. They would tell him to maintain position and continue patrols. Had received those kinds of orders before. He had followed them. But he had also watched good people die because help did not come in time. He had seen worlds burn because everyone assumed someone else would handle the problem. "Set course for the territories," he said. "Maximum speed." Captain said carefully, "That is against orders." "I know," replied. He walked back to his captain's chair and sat down. "Log this in the official record. The USS Defiant is responding to a distress call from the Collective. All other duties are suspended until this crisis is resolved." The bridge went quiet. His first officer, a tough woman named Karen who had served with him since the beginning, stepped forward. "The crew is ready, sir," she said simply. "Whatever you need." Nodded, he looked at the empty black space on the and thought about Commander and his people. He thought about the children on Seven. He thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy where most species looked out only for themselves. The USS Defiant changed course. Its engines hummed with power as it accelerated toward the distant territories. Did not know what they would find when they arrived. He did not know if they could help, but he knew that staying away was not an option. In the hours that followed, studied everything the ship's database contained about the collective. They were ancient and wise, but they were not soldiers. They were traders and builders and artists. They had lived in peace for so long that they had forgotten how to fight against an enemy that showed no mercy. Although the stars blurred as the USS Defiant jumped to faster speeds. In the distance, beyond the sea, the Alliance learned of the invasion through their own intelligence networks. They did not need the distress call. They already knew. General have received the reports in his war room. A massive chamber carved into the stone of his was a dead world burned by twin suns covered in ash and rock. Only the strongest survived there and was the strongest of all. "The Dominion has made their move at last," said to his commanders. Around the table sat leaders of 5 other species, all from worlds too harsh for the weak. Each of them had fought to survive on planets where the environment itself was the enemy. Now they sat as equals, united by shared hardship and mutual respect. "How long before they reach the core territories?" asked Captain Mora, a female whose people evolved in underground caverns where darkness was permanent and danger was constant. "4 days," replied one of his officers. "They cannot hold them back." The Alliance had been formed 15 years ago. When the harsh world species first made contact with the softer civilizations of the galaxy, they realized something important. The soft species did not understand true struggle. They had built their lives on comfort and assumed technology would protect them. They had forgotten that survival sometimes demanded more than weapons. It demanded will. They knew this. They had lived it. And when the first signs of aggression from the Dominion appeared, the Alliance had begun preparations for war. They had built warships that were not beautiful or sleek, but strong and reliable. They had trained soldiers who understood that defeat meant death not just for themselves, but for their families. "We move now," announced. "Send word to all member species, full mobilization." Within hours became a hive of activity. Warships launched from their ports. Soldiers moved to preparation stations. Supplies were loaded. The Alliance did not have the advanced technology of the resources of the core worlds. But they had something more valuable. They knew how to fight, and they were not afraid to pay the price. On a different world, in a high tower overlooking vast oceans, Captain Michael of the human warship USS Defiant received a formal message. It came through on the diplomatic channel, and it carried the seal of the Alliance. Was in his command quarters reviewing the ship's course when his communications officer brought him the message. "It is a request for immediate contact," the officer said. "They are requesting that the USS Defiant join a military coalition." Read the message 3 times. They knew about his decision to help they had been watching, and they wanted humanity to be part of something larger. "Open a channel," said. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to General. He was not human. His skin was gray and covered in natural armor. His eyes were completely black with no whites at all. He looked like something carved from stone, and he probably was, in a sense. Had fought his way to leadership on a world where the weak did not survive long. "Captain Harrison," said, his voice deep and resonant. "I am General of I command the Alliance." "General," replied, keeping his voice steady. "I have received your message, but I should tell you that I am acting without authorization from Earth Command." His black eyes seemed to glow with something that might have been approval. "Good. A captain who thinks for himself is more valuable than one who only follows orders. Humanity has always been this way. It is why we respect you." "What do you need?" asked. "The Dominion will not stop at the territories," said. "They will expand until they control the entire outer rim. Unless we stop them now, the Alliance is mobilizing our fleets. We will meet thee and defeat them. But we need you, Captain. We need the humans." Considered this. He knew from his studies that the Alliance was real, but he had never expected to work with them directly. Most humans in the galaxy kept their distance from the harsh world species. They were considered too dangerous, too willing to use violence to solve problems. but had read the history. He knew that every time they had been called upon to defend others, they had done so without hesitation. They did not conquer. They did not take what was not theirs. They protected. "We are on our way to the territories," said. "We will reach them in 2 days." "We will meet you there," replied. "Bring your warship and your courage, Captain. That is all we ask." The connection ended. Sat alone in his quarters and thought about what was coming. He thought about the moment he had decided to ignore Earth Command's unspoken authority and answer a distress call. He thought about the fact that now he was not just helping but joining a military alliance with species that most humans feared. He should have been afraid, he should have been uncertain, but instead felt something else, purpose. For the first time in his career, he was part of something that mattered. Over the next 2 days, as the USS Defiant raced toward the territories, studied everything he could find about the species. The who lived underground and fought in darkness. The born of ash and stone. The who evolved in the deep oceans of their world and learned to survive in crushing pressure. The who had survived in eternal winter. The Sethian, who came from a world of radiation and learned to adapt. Each species had a story of survival against impossible odds. And each of them had chosen to join the alliance because they understood something that the softer species of the galaxy had forgotten. That strength meant nothing without the will to use it for something worthwhile. When the USS Defiant finally emerged near the territories, the view that greeted was devastating. Entire space stations hung dark and silent. Debris from destroyed warships floated in vast fields, and scattered across the system, waiting and ready, were the warships of the Alliance. The fleet was not large, only 30 warships, but they were arranged in a formation that spoke of discipline and strategy. And at the center, a message came through on all channels. "Welcome, humans, we stand together now." The ruins of the fleet hung in space like tombstones. Entire battlecruisers drifted silent and cold. Smaller ships had been torn apart, their sections scattered across thousands of kilometers. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, which was now the only major vessel still in operation. His 3 arms hung at his sides. His eyes, which had once held intelligence and hope, now held only the weight of everything he had lost. When the fleet arrived, followed by the human warship USS Defiant, felt something shift inside him. It was not hope exactly. Hope seemed too fragile a thing for the situation they faced, but it was something. It was the knowledge that he was no longer alone. Captain Harrison requested an immediate meeting with Commander. The 2 leaders sat in a small conference room aboard the flagship, separated by a transparent barrier because the atmosphere of and the atmosphere of Earth were not compatible. Could see clearly. He could see the exhaustion in his face, the trembling of his 3-fingered hands. "Thank you for coming," said, his voice translated through the ship's communication system. "I did not expect anyone to answer our call." "There are still species in this galaxy that believe honor matters," replied. "Thee and humanity are among them." Nodded slowly. He pulled up a tactical display that showed the current positions of the Dominion fleet. There were 200 ships. The Inhumans together had only 31. The numbers were overwhelming. "They attack everything at once," explained. "They do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender. They simply advance and destroy. I have lost 93 warships and 17 colony worlds. Millions of my people are dead or enslaved." Studied the display. He noticed something that might have missed. The ships moved in rigid formation. They followed a clear hierarchy. The largest ships stayed in the center, protected. The smaller ships formed a perimeter, attacking in coordinated waves. "They are strong," said, "but they are predictable." Looked at him with confusion. "Predictable? They have destroyed my entire fleet." "Yes," said, "because your fleet tried to match them in direct combat. That was your mistake, not your fault, but a mistake. We will not make it." Before could respond, alarms suddenly shrieked through the flagship. One of the guards rushed to the communication station and shouted something in the language. Stood up, his 3 arms reaching for the displays. "They have detected us," he said. "The fleet is moving to intercept." Stood up as well. "I need to return to my ship. We do not have much time." The first warship came through the debris field like a predator emerging from fog. It was massive, easily twice the size of any vessel. Its hull was covered with those ugly spikes had seen in the records. Weapons ports opened along its length, and then it fired. A cruiser positioned at the edge of the formation took the full force of the attack. Its shields glowed bright white as the energy weapons struck home. The captain did not retreat. Instead, she turned her ship to face the enemy directly and fired back. Her weapons were less advanced than the ones, but they were accurate. Two of the ship's weapon ports went dark. "All ships engage the enemy," came the voice of General across the combined fleet's communication channels. "Attack in pairs, cover each other's weak points, use superior maneuverability, rely on firepower, we will use strategy." Reached the bridge of the USS Defiant just as the battle began in earnest. Dozens of warships were now entering the combat zone. The darkness of space became alive with light as weapons fired from dozens of sources. The ships moved in ways they did not expect. When a destroyer advanced, a cruiser would move in close, so close that the larger ship's massive weapons could not be brought to bear. The USS Defiant was smaller and faster than any other warship in the battle. Used this advantage immediately. "Helm, take us in a wide arc around their left flank," he commanded. "I want to hit the weapons array on that destroyer. Fire everything we have once we are in position." His weapons officer, a woman named, nodded. "In range in 30 seconds, Captain." The USS Defiant moved like a dancer, weaving between larger ships and debris. They tried to track the small human vessel, but their targeting systems were designed for larger prey. By the time they tracked the USS Defiant, ship had already moved to a new position. The destroyer came into range, unleashed the full arsenal of the USS Defiant. Human missiles, guided by human minds, found their targets with deadly precision. The destroyer's left weapon array exploded in flames. Its shields collapsed on that side. A ship immediately moved in and struck again. For the first hour of battle, the strategy worked. The ships were powerful, but they fought like machines following a program. The Inhumans fought like creatures with minds and courage. They adapted. They improvised. They sacrificed pieces to destroy larger enemies. But slowly they learned to adapt as well. They began focusing their firepower instead of spreading it out. They began forming formations, and more ships kept arriving. 50 additional warships emerged from hyperspace, fresh and full of weapons. "We are losing the advantage," Karen's first officer said quietly. She was right. The numerical advantage was too great. Even with superior tactics, the Inhumans could not fight forever against enemies that kept coming. Received a message from General. The commander's black eyes seemed harder than before, but his voice was steady. "Captain Harrison said, we must begin our secondary operation. We cannot win through direct combat. We must strike at their command structure." Understood. This was always the plan, but it required a level of commitment that meant accepting massive casualties. "I am listening," replied. "We need a strike team," continued. "Humans, soldiers who are willing to board their flagship and destroy their command systems. If we can do this, the fleet will become confused. Without centralized orders, they cannot coordinate. That is how we win." Looked at his crew, he looked at Karen and And. He looked at the screens showing the battle raging all around them. He made his decision. "We will provide the team," he said. "Tell me what you need." The plan was desperate and dangerous. A small shuttle would approach the massive flagship under cover of the main battle. The strike team would breach the hull and fight through the interior, destroying the command center and the communication arrays. Then they would have to escape. Most of them would probably die. Selected volunteers himself. Karen stepped forward immediately, so did, and the young communications officer refused to be left behind. From the species, fierce warriors emerged, creatures born in fire and ice and stone. They were ready. As the shuttle launched from the USS Defiant, watched from the bridge. The small craft dodged between the larger warships, moving through the chaos of battle. In a few minutes, his friends and these warriors would be on the largest ship in the fleet, surrounded by enemies. Turned his attention back to the battle around him. The main fleet continued to fight. Ships fell silent. Destroyers burned. And in the distance, the survivors watched and waited, hoping that their rescuers would succeed. The shuttle reached the flagship. The first explosions of breach charges lit up the dark metal hull. The interior of the flagship was a maze of metal corridors and chambers. Karen led the strike team through the darkness, her weapon ready, her eyes sharp. Behind her came, and a warrior named who was almost as wide as the corridor itself. The other team members moved silently through the darkness, creatures from harsh worlds who understood the meaning of survival. The alarms were shrieking through the entire ship. They knew they had been breached. It was only a matter of time before guards arrived. "Move faster," Karen commanded. The communication arrays are 1 level up and 3 sections forward. They had studied the schematics of flagships captured years ago. They were creatures of rigid structure. Their ships were built according to strict design principles. The command center was always in the same place. The communication arrays were always nearby. Ran a small scanner over the next door. "This is it," he said. "Behind this door is a maintenance shaft. It will get us to the command deck level." The door exploded open. Soldiers emerged, massive creatures with thick armor and weapons that fired blue energy bolts. Fired first, her weapon striking one of the soldiers in the chest. The impact threw the creature backward, but it did not fall. They were built tough, designed for combat. Moved forward, his massive gray body filling the corridor. A weapon bolt struck him directly, and he barely slowed down. He reached the nearest soldier and struck with one of his stone-hard fists. The creature fell and did not move again. "Keep going," Karen shouted. "Do not stop for anything." They broke through into the maintenance shaft. It was narrow and tight, but it led upward toward the command deck. Climbed fastest, his smaller human frame perfect for moving quickly through tight spaces. Behind him, the warriors climbed as well, their natural strength making the physical effort seem almost easy. The shaft opened into a control room. Banks of equipment filled the space, all of it glowing with indicator lights and displays showing the battle raging outside. And at the center of the room stood a single figure. It was the commander. He was taller than his soldiers, his armor colored differently, marking him as leadership. The commander did something with his hands, and more soldiers appeared from hidden doors. A dozen of them, each carrying weapons, each programmed to protect their leader at any cost. Karen did not hesitate. She charged forward, firing as she ran, provided cover from the left, moved to the right, seeking the communication arrays, stood in the middle of the room, blocking the commander's access to escape routes. The battle was brutal and close. The soldiers fought with the precision of machines, but the humans fought with something more. They fought with will and adaptability. Went down, struck by a weapon bolt, but she continued firing even from the ground. Reached the communication array and began planting charges. Took a blast directly to his chest and fell, but his body blocked 3 soldiers from advancing further. Karen reached the commander. He was faster than his soldiers, his movements precise and deadly. But Karen was faster still. She was a human born on a harsh world, trained to fight in darkness and danger. She struck with her weapon, and the commander fell. "Arrays are set," called out. 30 seconds until detonation. The strike team pulled back. Karen grabbed, who was wounded but still alive. The warrior Vex lifted, whose breathing was shallow but present. They ran back toward the shaft as the sound of approaching soldiers echoed through the corridors. The explosions came with a force that shook the entire flagship. The communication arrays lit up and then went dark. The voice of the commander, which had been giving orders to every ship in the fleet, suddenly fell silent. The strike team reached the shuttle. The pilot, a Sethian named who had survived radiation and ice, gunned the engines and pulled away from the dying ship. Behind them, the flagship was in chaos. Fires burned. The central command structure collapsed. 1,000 systems that relied on centralized coordination fell offline. Back on the USS Defiant, watched the sensor readings shift. For the first time since the battle began, the fleet's movements became confused. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began moving independently. Some continued forward, others stopped. A few turned and fired on their own allies by mistake. "They have no orders," Karen said across the communication line as the shuttle approached. "The command structure is destroyed. The fleet is broken." Felt something inside him shift. This was the moment. This was the turning point. "All ships," he commanded across the Alliance frequency. "They are in chaos. This is our time. Attack with everything. Drive them back." The ships, which had been fighting defensively, turned aggressive. A cruiser smashed through a formation, its weapons firing continuously. A ship moved in close to a destroyer and rammed it, both ships tumbling through space. The human USS Defiant targeted the largest remaining warship and fired with full power. One by one, the ships began to fall. Without orders, without centralized coordination, they could not adapt to the assault. They fired powerful weapons, but they fired at random. They moved in patterns that no longer served any purpose. Within an hour, the tide had completely turned. The fleet, which had seemed unstoppable, was in full retreat. 50 of their 200 ships had been destroyed. Another 60 were crippled and burning. The rest were fleeing toward the edge of the system. General sent a message too. "The humans have won this day," the commander said, his black eyes seeming to glow with respect. "You sacrificed much. Your people are brave beyond measure." Received the shuttle. Karen limped off first, supporting who was wounded but would survive. The warrior Vex carried in his arms. The commander was there to meet them, his 3 arms reaching out in a gesture of gratitude. "You saved us," said to Karen. "Your sacrifice saved everything." "We saved each other," Karen replied. "That is what allies do." But knew the cost. 3 members of the USS Defiant crew had died on the flagship. 7 warriors would not be returning. The losses were even worse, numbering in the millions, but they had won. They had turned back the invasion. Called for a formal gathering of all the commanders. In a special chamber aboard the flagship, leaders of the species and humanity met for the first time as equals who had fought together and survived. "The Dominion will continue to exist," said, his 3 arms gesturing at the tactical displays. "But their invasion is broken. The question now is what we do next." "We pursue them," one commander suggested. "We follow them home and destroy them completely." But stood up. "No," he said. "We offer them terms. We tell them that if they continue to attack us, they will face the combined strength of the Alliance and humanity. But if they withdraw and accept that the age of conquest is over, they can survive." General's black eyes studied carefully. "You show mercy to a species that showed you none." "I do," replied, "because mercy is what separates us from them. The fought because they are the Dominion had learned to fear the alliance of humans, and their fleet, once invincible in their own assessment, had been broken across the territories. The remaining warships regrouped at the outer edge of the system, unwilling to advance further but equally unwilling to surrender. Sent a message to the commanders, broadcast on all frequencies. His voice was calm and steady. "This is Captain Harrison of the human warship USS Defiant, an ally of the Alliance. Your invasion of space has ended. You have 2 choices. You can withdraw your fleet immediately and return to your own territories, or you can face complete annihilation. You have 6 hours to decide." The message was not a negotiation. It was a statement of fact. The Dominion had sent 200 ships to conquer peaceful people. They had lost nearly half their fleet. They faced an alliance of species that had proven they would fight for what they believed in. For 3 hours there was silence. The fleet did not move. Their commanders were communicating among themselves, trying to understand what had happened. Their rigid military structure, which had always moved in response to centralized orders, was struggling to function without those orders. Then a response came. It came from someone identified as the High Commander of the Dominion, speaking from somewhere far back in space. He was not on the flagship that had destroyed. He was safe, far away, sending other creatures to fight his battles. "We withdraw," the High Commander said. "But know this, Captain Harrison, the Dominion has not forgotten this defeat. We will return." Did not respond to the threat. Instead, he simply watched as the remaining warships turned and began to move away from the territories. They accelerated, jumping to faster speeds, moving back toward the distant territories of the Dominion. The battle was over. The Alliance fleet did not pursue. General sent a message congratulating on his decision to offer terms rather than seek total destruction. "You are wise for one so young," said, his black eyes reflecting something that might have been approval. "Mercy is a strength, not a weakness, though we'll understand this eventually." The ships began the process of leaving the territories. They had other worlds to protect, other threats to monitor. But before General departed, he made a formal announcement to all assembled forces. "Humanity has proven itself worthy of the Alliance," declared. "From this day forward, humans will be considered full members of our Alliance. Any attack on human worlds will be met with the same response as attacks on, or any other member world. We stand together." The announcement sent ripples through the galaxy. Humans, a species that had been considered minor players in galactic politics, were now formally allied with one of the galaxy's most fearsome military powers. The message was clear: do not underestimate humanity. In the weeks that followed, worked with Commander to begin the process of rebuilding space. The colony worlds would need to be resettled. The dead would need to be honored. The people would need to adjust to a new reality where they were not the strongest power in the region, but they were not alone. called to his private chamber one evening. The commander served a drink to, a tradition that meant respect and trust among his people. "Your people saved us," said. His 3 arms were still, his large blue eyes focused completely on. "When no one else in the galaxy would help, humanity answered the call. I do not have words sufficient to express what this means to my people." Took the drink. "We answered because it was the right thing to do," he said. "We answered because we understood that living in a galaxy where anyone can be destroyed without consequence is no kind of life at all. We answered because honor demanded it." Nodded slowly. "The collective would like to formally propose a deeper alliance with humanity. We would like to establish trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. We would like to learn from you, and we would like to help you build a greater presence in this region of space." "I would need to consult with Earth Command," said carefully. His blue eyes reflected sadness. "Your government gave you no orders to come to us. They would have ordered you not to come, and yet you came anyway. Why do you still answer to people who would deny you the honor of doing what is right?" Did not have a good answer for that. He had been asking himself the same question since the moment he changed his ship's course toward the territories. When the USS Defiant returned to human space 3 months later, knew that things would be different. Earth Command would not be pleased about his violation of orders, but they would also not be able to deny what had happened. Humanity had proven itself in the conflict. The news had already reached the core worlds. Humans were respected in ways they had never been before. As he entered the command center to face a board of inquiry about his actions, thought about Karen, who was still recovering from her wounds. He thought about and who had fought on the flagship. He thought about the thousands of humans and who had given their lives to stop the invasion. He thought about the children who would grow up in a galaxy where they had allies, where they knew someone would answer their call for help. The board of inquiry lasted 6 hours. They questioned every decision he had made. They demanded to know why he had disobeyed orders. They wanted justifications for putting a valuable warship at risk. But in the end, they could not punish him. The political pressure was too great. Humanity's stock in the galaxy had risen dramatically. The Alliance had made it clear that humanity was their ally. The collective was offering trade and technology. Several other species were requesting direct contact with the humans. The board released from command of the USS Defiant, but they did not discharge him from service. Instead, they promoted him to admiral. Humanity needed more captains like Harrison, leaders who understood that sometimes the right thing to do was more important than following orders. In the years that followed, humanity's role in the galaxy expanded rapidly. Trade routes were established with space. Military academies began training students in cooperation with species. Cultural exchanges brought humans and aliens together to share knowledge and build understanding. The Dominion never attacked again. They understood now that the age of conquest was over. The galaxy had changed, not through any great treaty or political summit, but through the actions of a small group of creatures who chose to do what was right when everyone else looked away. Harrison never saw combat again. He spent his final years in command of Earth's space defense forces, training a new generation of warriors who understood that true strength came not from weapons alone, but from the will to protect others. When he retired, the Alliance held a ceremony in his honor. General himself came to present with the Medal of Eternal Alliance, marking him as a defender of all harsh world species. But what remembered most clearly was a moment that had occurred just before the final battle. He had been standing on the bridge of the USS Defiant, alone for a moment, looking out at the darkness of space. He had thought about the families waiting on colony worlds. He had thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy where you could choose to help or choose to ignore. He had made his choice. That choice had changed everything, not just for humans, but for the entire galaxy. It had shown that compassion and courage could be just as powerful as advanced weapons. It had demonstrated that small actions, when driven by conviction and honor, could reshape the course of events. Years later, when young people asked why he had risked everything to answer a distress call from aliens he had never met, he would give them the same answer. "Because that is what we are," he would say. "We are the species that answers calls for help. We are the creatures who stand beside others in the darkness. We are humans, and that means something." The territories became a place of peace and prosperity. The Alliance became stronger and more unified. And humanity earned a place at the table of galactic powers, not through conquest or politics, but through the simple act of choosing to care. No hope had remained when the SOS was heard, but humanity had answered. And in that answer, hope had been restored not just but for a galaxy that had almost forgotten what compassion meant. The stars would remember. Programmed to dominate, we fight because we choose to protect. That choice is what makes us stronger. The battle had been won. The turning point had come and passed. But the most important test was still ahead. Could the galaxy learn to live together, or would the Dominion force another confrontation? Did not know the answer yet, but he knew that humans had proven themselves. They had answered a call for help when no one else would. They had fought alongside species considered dangerous and strange. They had shown courage and sacrifice. Whatever came next, humanity would face it with honor. Operation had begun. Everything now depended on the courage of those who had volunteered to walk into certain danger. The galaxy held its breath, felt his crew straighten around him. This was what they had been built for. This was why humans existed in the galaxy at all. "Ready all weapons," he commanded. "Take position with the Alliance fleet." The USS Defiant moved forward to join the. In that moment, humanity became part of something greater than itself. The stars seemed to watch and wait. The real fight was about to begin. Of space itself, the worlds burned. Placed his hand on the armrest of his captain's chair and made a quiet promise to himself. Whatever came next, whatever enemies waited in that distant corner of space, the humans had answered the call. That had to mean something. That had to make a difference. The journey had begun.